Hey everybody, welcome back. It's launch day for Before Pittsburgh, and this is the second live stream. I promised you 4 p.m. today Eastern time, and with me is my good friend, best friend, and editor Jodie Cain Smith for this one. So let's do it. Let's go live. I mean, why not? It's just a good chance to chat on the internet where everybody can see you. Oh my God, did you see my first live stream? I was like so completely out of sorts. Alexa kept texting me wanting the link, and I was like, just go to Facebook. I was like, it's on there. Just go.
Stop stressing me out. It's launch day.
Yeah, well, once you actually build the studio and like go in and start doing our thing, like there's no way for me to share it with you. Like there's not like a little link for me to just like copy and paste it anywhere. Yeah. You just have to be a subscriber to our stuff. So you've got Pat there with you.
What?
Hey, pal.
Baby, you want to say hey to Casey? Okay. Well, you're not in the camera, silly.
Hey, cutest boy in Alabama. How are you, Fred?
He's having an afternoon snack.
Nice.
He informed us the other day that there are actually 6 meals of the day. There's breakfast, then snack, then lunch, then second snack, then dinner, then dessert.
No, it's not dessert, then bedtime.
What are you, a hobbit? Only hobbits have 2 breakfasts. Yes, but what about second breakfast?
Yes.
All right, cool.
For when school starts, this boy is going to be sad because he has had second breakfast every day this summer.
Well, look, this is the first day of school for Holly, and she is suffering.
Is she back in person school?
She's doing Connections Academy, so she's in the online school. So she got to do it from home, but I mean, yeah, she's straight suffering. So,
yeah.
All right. Enough of all that non-book stuff.
Yeah, let's talk about you and your book.
Yeah, so awkward. So so in the first one, I made these little shot glasses.
I know, those are so cute. I love them.
So the very first scene, as you know, of Before Pittsburgh is a flashback to 1995, and we get Brian and Tony just doing Brian and Tony being buds like they always were. I don't think this is a side of Brian that we saw in After December. This is a different view to their friendship. And After December, we got this kind of like one-sided dedication. Brian sort of obsessed with Tony and sort of letting Tony down and that kind of thing. But in this one, you get this kind of sense that the two of them had more of a brotherhood and an understanding between them. So how did you feel about it being the opening scene? Because we never go back to that. We never go back to 1995 again.
I was just about to ask, like, honestly, what do you think of it being the opening scene? I know I wanted it to open. I wanted this book to open with energy, and it's After December and Before Pittsburgh as a pairing. They're very introspective. You're very much inside Brian's head. And so I wanted the opening scene to show Brian's pre-world, like pre-Tony dying world, but show that in an endearing and energetic way. And I thought this scene best does that. It puts the readers, it tells the readers right out front why Tony's death is important and why it's why Brian is not, I don't want to say stuck in grief, because I don't think you ever actually stop grieving. I think grief is a permanent state. It just kind of ebbs and flows. But it's not like you wake up one morning and you go, woo, over that. Like that doesn't happen. But for Brian, the drowning tides, they lasted a really long time. And so I wanted the audience to understand that, to understand their bond and why Tony was such a special person and why it's very hard for us as human beings to accept the death of really good people.
Yeah.
Tony had his demons and he had his flaws like everybody else. But I think of all the crew, he was the one with the most compassion and the most love for everyone around him. And therefore, it's really hard to lose those people in particular.
Yeah, he tends to be, and we know this from After December, he's sort of the emotional base for the whole crowd, right? Like he is more willing to talk about how much he loves each and every one of them. He's more willing to try to draw them into conversation about how much they love each other and how much they depend on each other. Like he's definitely that sort of emotional base for all of them. We get that there's such a gap in After December when Tony is not there. Even just the conversations, you imagine that when they used to hang out and Tony was there, the conversations had a much more richness to them. Even when we see them on New Year's Eve and After December, there's more sharing and there's more love for one another in that room. And then after Tony's gone, he just sort of sucks that part is missing from their relationships. I wanted to begin with I'm like you, like I wanted to go to a place where we like Brian, right? Like I wanted Brian to be a likable guy in Before Pittsburgh. And nobody who reads After December comes out liking Brian. They're all pretty pissed about it. And I didn't want that for Before Pittsburgh. I didn't want people to start out not liking him. And they start the book of After December not liking Brian because he's in bed with this other girl. She says that she loves him and he doesn't answer. He answers the phone instead. Like he's a jerk from the outset in After December. And I didn't want that for Before Pittsburgh. So I wanted to put him in a position where we could see Brian as being a really good guy. And it's difficult to contrast him with Tony because Tony's a really good guy. And so how do we put the two of them in a situation where they're both going to be good guys? And yet Brian still kind of comes out looking like a little bit like the better of the two. And then when we get to there's a conversation a little bit later after they've gone to the frat party, and Brian's sort of pushing on Tony to be a little bit more than he thinks he should be or than he thinks he wants to be. And that ambition between the two of them really shows us the difference between where they were at that time in 95.
Yeah.
And then go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say the other thing that I liked about starting with that scene is even though, Tony really gets the two of them in a pretty bad situation in that scene. Like his emotions get the best of him. But what is undeniable is that Tony is the crew's moral center. And his morality is so defined that he will make bad decisions in order to stick with that, what he's defined as morally good. And so we know from the get-go, from that scene, you move into then, Brian in Spain and Brian with the kind of unintentional confessional kind of thing, like I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be here, but I'm going to try it anyway. Because you start the book with Brian and Tony, with all the shots and the frat party and all of this, that the reason Brian is then in his present state is because he's lost his moral center. What little bit of good versus evil and, the good angel on the shoulder, what little bit of that he had was Tony. And with Tony gone, how is he supposed to find direction in life when he doesn't either have the example of Tony being far more kind than at times Brian deserves? Without Tony risking his own physical safety in order to save others.
Yeah.
Where's Brian going to go? Of course he's lost. Of course, any of us would be. When you say that about how Tony's kinder to Brian than he probably deserves. One of my favorite lines is Brian talking about how one Christmas Eve, Tony asked if he could spend the night at Brian's house. And his mom said that
well, don't you want to see what Santa brought you? Like, why would you spend the night at your friend's house on Christmas Eve? And he goes, oh, everything that Santa brought for Brian is for me as well. Like, just the idea that, like, of course I'm going to stay at Brian's house because everything he gets is mine and everything I get is his, because we're that close. We're interchangeable in that way.
Tony has an assumption that Brian is going to, share with him without hesitation, that he's going to love him he assumes that everyone has this, capacity for limitless love and compassion in the world. That is Tony. And I know people like that, and you have to have them in your lives. You're like, everyone needs someone like that. What we don't need is for that person to hide his depression so much that then that is taken away from us.
Yeah.
And that's where I could totally buy into every bit of Brian's anger at Tony, every bit of, you were always acting like you're so open and honest and everything, but you didn't tell me about the one thing that you really needed to tell me about.
Yeah.
Like, if I were Brian, I would be really pissed off at Tony, and it would take me a while to get over that anger, to move beyond it. I might not ever completely forgive Tony, but that's where, as far as like bigger themes and important themes in both of these books, After December and Before Pittsburgh, there is a death is one thing. How the heck do you come to grips with a suicide?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're onto something with that. If Tony expected full disclosure from Brian, but Brian starts lying to him about the time he goes to San Francisco, right? And he's keeping parts of himself from Tony. And so he almost thinks, and After December, it's almost like he expects that Tony was keeping something from him as well. Well, I was lying to him, so of course he was lying to me.
Yeah.
But then when we get into Before Pittsburgh and he starts to examine it, he thinks, and the flip is true, that like the only reason I lied to him was because I was doing things that I shouldn't be doing. Tony's suffering was not his own. Like, it wasn't intentional. He wasn't doing those things.
No.
Those weren't choices he was making. Right. And so a lot of the, I want to ask you about this too, because I struggled with whether or not I included Brian in therapy. And I put Brian in therapy for two reasons. One, because he needed therapy.
Yeah.
Like, he absolutely needed it. But number two, because I needed a device for him to be able to kind of unpack some of these things out loud, to say them out loud, and have somebody else kind of hold them up and show them to him. And so I used professional psychiatrists to do that for him. But I don't remember a lot of our friends getting therapy in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I was wondering if you thought it was a stretch that Brian would have had that kind of intervention.
Considering the depth of his spiraling, I don't think it is, and where his parents are coming from, like the economic class that his parents are in, being, both are highly educated, and in the 90s, they would be kind of the economic class in America that would see therapy as an option.
Right.
And Brian himself, in the 90s, you kind of had to be in that, at that economic status for that to even really be a consideration. The rest of us, it was kind of like, deal with it your own self, so to speak. But I do think in the 90s, we were opening up to the idea of speaking to people professionally. It started, very much in college campuses, how you could go to your advisor. They had counseling centers, at least. I'm guessing if they had them in Alabama, they were going to have them other places, since we're not exactly on the forefront of anything.
Well, yeah, but so there was a bar here in Columbia called Group Therapy, right?
No.
So there was this sense that like group therapy or counseling groups or getting some kind of chance to talk it out. And maybe that was like an Oprah Winfrey post Donahue into the Oprah era, right? Where she wanted everybody, and Dr. Phil, where people are supposed to sort of bare their souls and other people are going to like psychoanalyze them and stuff. So I think we were sort of on the cusp of that in that era. And I think you're exactly right. It was really more about economic class. Can you afford to pay for that kind of therapy? And of course, Brian's parents can.
Yeah. I, in 1997, I believe, 97 or 98, I actually did a play that was a group therapy session. So I know that was part of the culture, part of the conversation in certain aspects of our culture. And I remember thinking in college, my God, I need therapy. And then thinking I would never be able to afford that.
Right.
It wasn't until I had, my husband's military health insurance that finally I was like, gosh, I need therapy. And then looked and was like, oh, they cover it. Yay.
Well, now I think too, like we've gone in decades now, we've gone to where it's gotten more and more affordable, right? People have tried to make it more accessible because we see what a big impact mental health really is. And it was interesting. You and I were both working on this book during COVID. So I finished the draft of it and then you started editing it during COVID. And so we have both of us this experience of like delving into somebody else's deep and very personal grief while our own is sort of rolling along on the like tides coming in, right, of our own sort of confusion and frustration and isolation. And yet here's this opportunity to be sort of immersed in Brian's grief. That's what people keep asking me about, writing it during COVID. I'm like, are you kidding? Everything I felt during COVID is transferred directly into Brian's experience.
Oh yeah. And I will purposefully one up you on that. In the middle of COVID and in the middle of editing Before Pittsburgh. And so I've got some deep emotional stuff going on. My own personal therapist, who I had been seeing for over a year and we were doing so great, she got COVID. And she got a really bad case of COVID. And while she was hallucinating from the COVID for 3 weeks, she decided, I need a career change.
No, she left her practice.
Well, she went into private practice and she even like, okay, Jodie, I'll give you a few more sessions for free while I get my private practice set up. But I'm no longer going to be at the facility where your insurance actually covers this. And now I'm back to, holy crap, can I afford therapy? And then I was like, okay, so what did I do? My reaction, I think, to that, to all of a sudden COVID and my therapist, sorry, COVID and all of that, my reaction was very Brian. I didn't start drinking my face off.
Or having sex with everybody that walked around in a skirt.
No. I don't think the husband would appreciate that. And the 6-year-old would not appreciate the hangover version of me. It's not. What I did was I threw myself into writing. I was writing like crazy, rewriting a novel of my own. I was editing with you, just trying anything, any way I could get emotion into my laptop and out of my head and heart. Yeah. Like just put it there, put it there, put it there. And luckily, I did a lot of stress eating.
We all have the COVID-15, Jodie. It's fine. It's fine. I'm walking around like a college freshman with it. It's fine. But I do think it gave me a place to go that was safer than examining my COVID experience, right? It was safer to go into Barcelona and watch Brian just drink and screw his way through Barcelona. And it was safer for me to watch Brian try to piece together relationships with people brand new people like Jada, and also to try to understand some of the things that were broken in relationships that he had, like with the crew. And so let me ask you about this too. So there's a couple of scenes in here that are taking on racism, that take on how Chris specifically is treated. And there's a couple of references made to Chris being Black, to Chris being an African-American, and also to Jada being Black, being an African-American. And I wondered how you felt about those scenes. Like, we didn't spend a whole lot of time on them. We didn't work through them that much. You seem to feel like they felt pretty authentic. Most of my beta readers said they felt pretty authentic, but I'm wondering what the reading public is going to say.
Yeah, I mean, I really can't ever predict what the reading public is going to say about anything, honestly, especially anymore. But I firmly believe that if you're writing from a place of authenticity and sincerity, which Brian is the male version of you, you know, we all know that by now. Like, he is your male alter ego. Of, you know, if I, what's that terrible Beyonce song, If I Were a Boy?
Oh no.
You know,
yes, that's right, folks. It's at 20 minutes and 57 seconds when Jodie mentions Beyonce in our live stream.
Tell you the honest truth, I know this song because Reba McEntire covered it and made it even worse. And I love Reba. And I was heartbroken that she sang the song. But anyway, if I were a boy, and then it goes into all the things that I could do if I were a boy.
Yeah.
I can't do because I'm a girl. And so I think there's some escapism in Brian in that you're like, hey, if I was a boy without consequence, what would I do? Yeah. And so you're able to kind of escape into Brian, you know? And so from that point of view, and because you're writing from Brian's point of view, then you can do this with authenticity. The other thing that was not present in any of Jada or Chris's scenes were stereotypes. The only stereotypes that were actually used at all were how some of the white people in the scenes treated Chris in one of the latter scenes. But you didn't make Chris or Jada into a stereotype. Like, Jada is a character that is very difficult. It was very difficult for me to figure her out. Chris is a good buddy with a good heart and a really big brain on his shoulders. So he was easy for me to understand. You know, I was like, Chris just wants everybody in the crew to be happy and healthy and successful in life and stop having so many problems. Yeah. Like, he's like, it's just complicated enough. Stop inventing problems. I think that's where his frustration with Brian lies. Jada, on the other hand, like, and the fact that she's significantly younger than everyone else in the book, and it's not that she's like, you know, 19 and the rest of them are 30, but she is still in her undergrad. She is, you know, her brain is not done developing and all this kind of stuff, that I don't think she was prepared to be in a relationship with a occasional train wreck that is Brian.
Well, yeah. and here's Brian.
She stepped in a big old mess when she got involved with that.
Yeah, I was going to say too, I think here's Brian maybe looking for the love of his life, right? Maybe looking for his future partner, maybe looking for somebody, you know, who's going to be with him forever, because he's already had, you know, these other two that, you know, were intense, but they were young, and, you know, he messed those up, and he's never going to be able to get that back. And so I think he's also in that graduate school position of thinking, let's take this more seriously and let's be serious about each other. And I'm not sure Jada's ready for that. Right. And so when she gets the opportunity to go back to what is essentially her Casey, right? Like, is essentially the guy that got away, that now he wants her back. And so she's going to jump back into that, even though that's not stable, that's not steady, that's probably not going to go anywhere. I would think if there was a third book, we'd see Jada come back around again, because that he's going to use her up and spit her out, right? Like, that's just how those younger relationships work. But I appreciate you saying that. I loved Jada from the minute she walked in the room.
Yeah. Now, and you mentioned one of Brian's other troubles. Like, if I could get a hold of Brian and shake him and tell him something, it would be that he was he thought he had to track down whoever his one and only, and that there was a certain way that life was supposed to go, and he's supposed to have a woman, like almost entitled to find this soulmate of his. But I wanted to look at him and go, stop looking for someone else when you don't even know yourself yet. Like, figure you out, become comfortable in your own skin, develop your own full life that's just Brian at the center, and watch other things come into your orbit then. Like, it will, the Jadas and the Caseys and these other people will then all of a sudden see you as a possibility. But right now, they see you as something that needs to be rescued, or something that will be fun for a few nights. We saw that in another girl. Someone that will, whenever you want to be self-destructive, grab Brian, because he's up for being self-destructive, those kind of things. Instead of anyone actually, and it takes until the very end when Brian has gone through this huge, all this self-work and everything, that then someone can actually look at him and say, you are a possibility. You are plausible. Yeah. As far as not destroying my orbit kind of thing. Because Brian, at the beginning of this book, he's still destroying things, people. And
there was a bit of a challenge because we have the Pittsburgh chapter in After December. And so I had to stay true to some of those things in After December. Yeah. Some of the things that the Pittsburgh chapter says happened. And I was like, oh man, how do I write that stuff? Like, how does that actually happen? How do I get there? So it's an interesting position to be in, to write something where the ending has already it's already been told. But I wanted to make it a little bit fresher and make it a little newer. So how did that final Pittsburgh section go for you? I mean, did you feel like this is a new version of the 020202?
I was cool with, like, I felt like it, I had a lot of questions that were answered with Before Pittsburgh, which was good. It wasn't, like, I felt like this was a fuller and truer explanation of what happened, instead of like, okay, we're going to get to, like, this is the ending. This is what happens with Brian. Well, you missed 3 years in there. And so I appreciated the fuller explanation.
Thanks. Alexa said that I had done a good job of taking Brian from a place where everybody hates him to a place where he's actually redeemed, and you could actually really like him and want to be around him.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, well, okay. Feels like I worked a miracle then in Before Pittsburgh. All right. Well, listen, you did amazing work on this, as always. Everything I give you is always better when you give it back. You're just a really talented editor. I think that you can see things. Maybe it's because how well you know me, but you can see things in my work that I don't even see, and really convince me to tease those things out. You more than once said to me, tell the truth, Casey, stop skirting around this or that. And like, let's be honest about what the scene really is all about. So I just want to thank you for your work on the book. Well, it really is something to be really proud of.
The point of an editor, and I hope every writer out there finds an editor who can look at their work without emotional attachment. Like, I like all of these characters now. I like the book and all this kind of stuff, but I didn't go into it with that approach. I went into it with, Casey is, I have been hired to make this book her best work. And so there's no emotional attachment. There's no like, oh, Casey, this is such a beautiful line. I think we should figure out a way to keep it. No, cut it. And that's what every writer needs. And just hopefully you'll find that in a person who can also communicate in a polite way, and you don't end up like burning down a friendship in the process. So, maybe you shouldn't go with really close besties as your editor.
Well, yeah, we'll see. There might not be another one between the two of us now that we've gotten Brian out of the way. But I did know that the only other person that I thought was going to be as satisfied with this book, besides Alexa, who asked for it, would be you when you said to me after December, like, I don't think that the epilogue really gets me where I need to go here, Casey. This story is not over. It's just not finished yet. Okay, well, here you go, Jodie. It's finished now. So now we can walk away, right? No more after December books. This is
we're good, but
we've lived our after December life.
This is by far not the last book from you. So.
No, definitely not. There's more in the works as always, and more for you as well. So tell us about what you've got, because we just did an interview for Right on SC about your books. How did book launches go in July for you? Both the reboot of The Woods at Barlow Bend and the brand new Bayou Cresting, which, by the way, I could not put down and read in a day and a half. like raced through Bayou Cresting in a day and a half.
Woods at Barlow Bend, as it should have always been. It's so beautiful. So this one, it's got recipes and stuff in the back from my grandma. I cannot guarantee any of the recipes because Granny rarely ever followed a recipe, but for some reason she wrote things down. So try them. Might work. But the story is wonderful. And then the new one is Bayou Cresting. The Wanting Women of Hewitt Point. The launch is, I really think of it as it's still happening. We've had a few hiccups because of COVID. Like I had some in-person events and book signings planned that have had to be postponed. The big launch party, I say big, it was 50 people that I basically did a vaccine passport for myself because I was like, you are not coming if you are not vaccinated. I have immunocompromised people in my family, and I had planned this this book launch and like paid all this money and all this kind of stuff for it. And then the Delta variant showed up in Mobile, Alabama. And I was like, oh, good Lord, what is happening? And so I went back through the guest list and I was like, vaccinated. Okay, good. So we were safe and social distance and masked and all that good stuff. But what's been really funny about this so far is some of the reception that I have gotten from it from family members. My mother called me after reading 2 or 3 of the stories, because it's a novel and story. So it's like 13 stories, I think. She called me asking if my upbringing was so terrible. She basically asked, who hurt you? And why are you so angry? And where did these dark characters come from? Jodie, where did you get this stuff? And I was like, my imagination. Your imagination can't be that sad. Oh, no. Not sad, Mom. It's rageful. And she's like, I know, it's so dark. And I was like, okay, thanks. This is a book that basically says if a woman could do anything without consequence in order to get what she wants, what would she do? Right. So what? Women aren't exactly like perfect, saintly human beings. I had another aunt tell my mother, oh my gosh, it's so good. She's done such a good job with the time period of the antebellum South and recalling all of that so accurately. But when you talk to her, ask her why there's so many characters.
It was really hard to keep up with. There's so many
And
characters.
I'm like, Mom, it's a short story collection. There is going to be a lot of characters. And I was like, and why are you people telling me this? I can't do anything about it. Like,
yeah, that's right.
So,
the book is published now. There's nothing I can do about it.
But the thing is, what I've thoroughly enjoyed is I have a large tribe of author friends, and all across the country that I met kind of on my way through the country as Jay and I moved around with the Army. And these people have received Bayou Cresting very well and are reaching out to me saying, hey, I want to write a review for this magazine. I want to review it for this website, that kind of stuff. And because they understand my angst and my rage, and my God, if I had something to throw.
It's adorable. Are you kidding me? It's adorable. You're adorable. So if you're just joining us, Jodie Cain Smith is the editor of Before Pittsburgh. Well, you've edited After December too, because you were one of my early beta readers for it. But you have the editorial credit on Before Pittsburgh. And we've been talking about Brian and some of the other stuff associated with our book together. But then also, of course, promoting her book too while she's here. And the cutest boy in Alabama as well in the background. It's too fun. All right, so
Casey is her latest book has been released today. Do you want to say congrats?
Congrats.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
It's a book about a boy a little bit like you. He's got two parents and no siblings. He just gets to be the one and only, just like you.
Yeah.
You just get to say things like, my parents got it right the first time. They didn't have to try again, right?
What?
Yep, that doesn't make any sense, Aunt Casey. We've enjoyed watching the summer shenanigans and the swimming in the lake and all that, or in the bay, I should say.
Right.
It's been a lot of fun. All right, friend. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your work on this book. It's so great, and I'm so proud of it. Those of you out there watching the video, you can get a shot glass if you share a very special graphic. I put the graphic up. It says, share me, get a shot glass on it. So if you're sharing anything else except that one, thank you, but that's not going to win you the shot glass. You got to share the one that says, share me and get a shot glass. And then we've got at 6 p.m., there's going to be a tweet chat. Maybe Jodie will jump on Twitter and join us there too. It's WS Chat. You can follow the hashtag WS Chat to see that conversation. And my Twitter handle is at Casey Whitener. So that's coming up at 6 p.m. And then at 8 p.m., we're getting readers to come in here and sit and talk about the books, two of whom are Teresa and Josh, who are a couple, and they've both read the books. Cool. And Josh binge read them. I mean, like, finished the one and texted me and was like, when does Before Pittsburgh come out? I must read it immediately. And I was like, it comes out August 17th. And he goes, that's not going to work for me. I need for you to send it to me immediately. Yeah. I was like, well, okay, here you go. So they're going to be on at 8 p.m. We're going to do another live stream then. So it's good to see you, Bay. Give hugs to your daddy for me. Thanks again, Jodie, for being here and for being part of the book. I just love you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's good to see your face.
Yeah, same. We don't do this often enough.
No.
Bye, darling.
Bye.